all been Raspberry runners, have all been winners. We've got two questions, though, we've got to sort out with Willie before we get stuck into the hardcore stuff. First of all, good afternoon to you, Mr. Mullins.
Matt, how are you?
Real pleasure to have you on the show today, Willie. We just got Hereford this afternoon, so I thought we need a star name to get us going for the day. That's you.
I see. Anyway, anything to please you, Matt.
Okay. Well, really? Right, we'll come on to that later. Right, I have two things to ask you. There's a derby, a donkey derby at a place called Youghal in County Cork on Friday. How do I say that place?
I'm not sure, Matt. You're asking the wrong person there.
Well, you don't know how... I'm told it's Youghal or...
Oh, Youghal. Sorry, Youghal.
Yeah,
but I thought your pronunciation was a little off the mark.
Well, I'm afraid your spelling was rather off mark. Youghal is clearly Youghal, Willie.
Well, whatever.
Anyway, it's Youghal, according to Willie. And the second thing, we just saw immediate response, and I don't know anything about these kind of things, but I see the owner here is the Kate's Monkey Syndicate, and then I saw...
Often wondered about that myself.
Yeah, Patrick's riding the horse. Patrick's rather likes Kate Harrington. I was wondering...
I don't know anything about that, Matt. No, you're telling me more than I should know, probably. But
well, I mean, they're just trying to put two and two together and coming up with 6 or 7. Tell us about this horse, though. I mean, keeps improving, and I believe there is quite a nice story about the ownership of this horse and how you managed to get it after about 100 years off the track.
Well, I think Jackie bought it. David owned the horse, and a friend of Patrick's, David. They met at soccer years ago, and he wanted a horse to start riding in bumpers himself. So Jackie and David's mother went off and bought the horse one day and had it in training with the local trainer Mick Fitzgerald, and he won a bumper with him, and went on, ran a few times over hurdles, and he broke down, but he showed immense promise. And then I think David Thomas, he retired from riding, went to college, and they wondered, could they get a group of people together, namely all David and Patrick friends, I think, and that's who Kate Monkeys are. And one Kate Harrington must be the Kate, I think, and so he's been very lucky for them. Come back and won, I think, 3 out of 3.
Some people have said that they just said, look, find us a horse, Willie, that we can pay for the wedding with, and you found it.
Oh, Mac, our mass moving swiftly along.
Well, we wish them well. It really is an improver. That will win again. Willie, let's have a word about Cheltenham. We won't go through every single one of your runners, but let's start on the first day. Hurricane Fly. I mean, for me, he ran stones below form. I mean, we know he can destroy overturn, don't we?
Yes, I mean, he's probably just a little disappointing on the day. Probably wasn't as keen as he normally is to carry him into the race, and we were hoping that maybe settling better would improve him, but I think in this instance it didn't, and we paid the price, but hopefully we'll get him back to winning ways by Punchestown.
Willie, the big question before he won the Champion Wordle was, would he act at Cheltenham? Obviously now we've had a sort of good run and a not so good run. I mean, is there any chance that actually he sort of surpassed himself last year and actually Cheltenham really isn't his type of track, or is that just a nonsense? Did he just run slightly flat?
I think he ran slightly flat. You know, a couple of horses ran flat in Cheltenham, and probably Boston Bob was the other one. He didn't seem to pick up the bridle either at any stage during the race, and I was amazed at the business end of the race that both horses actually got nearly into the race, given how flat they ran. But unfortunately for us, that's what happened over there.
Certainly at the start, Hurricane was very sweaty, wasn't he, under the number cloth, and he didn't show sign of a relaxed horse.
Well, during the race he did, but he did. They were below at the start a good while, all right, and he did get quite hot, all right, but. You know, it's just
one of those things.
Disappointing, but there we are. You know.
Does he go to Punchestown now for the Champion Hurdle there then?
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah. And you let's just do Boston Bob with him because you've already just brought up his name. A good run, although I mean 1 or 2 people have said, you know, Ruby should have had him closer to the pace, and indeed I've had people who have specifically asked me to ask you whether you felt Ruby gave Boston a good ride on the card, but he was beat a long way out, wasn't he? It was almost a miracle he got second, as you've just said.
Yes, but I think he wasn't travelling for Ruby. You know, Ruby would have expected him to travel and maybe gain a half a length at every hurdle and be getting into the race at his leisure. And from early on in the race, you could see Ruby wasn't happy and he was niggling and squeezing. And just the horse wasn't carrying him. The horse didn't seem to be in great form. And he might have been remembering his race in Leopardstown. He had quite a hard race. I mean, he impressed me that day coming from an impossible position in Leopardstown in that real wet ground.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can just play on a horse's mind for their next run or so, and maybe that's what was in his head, and he never carried Ruby now.
What about, you mean, you've mentioned ground a few times there. I mean, the ground was good at Cheltenham, which is faster, certainly, than Boston Bob has ever raced on. I think good to soft was the only time he'd try any ground. We're good in it prior to Cheltenham. Hurricane, we know, went through the mud at Leopardstown really well. Is it just possible that both of them aren't quite as good on good ground?
No, both. Well, Hurricane Fly is certainly one on good ground.
Right.
That wouldn't be any problem to him. Boston Bob is bred to go on good ground. Possibly just a little extra pace they're going on good ground might have just caught him out. Plus the fact that he might have been a little bit, you know, mightn't be one thing. It could be a combination of two or three things. But I'd have no doubt with Boston Bob's pedigree that he will go on better ground, and especially we'll see that in Punchestown.
Where does he run next, Boston?
I'm sure he'll go to Punchestown too.
Right, and is he a chaser for next season, or is he a sort of hurdler?
He's every inch a chaser. I mean, we think it's fantastic that he can do what he's done so far this year over hurdles, given his size and scope.
Well, of course, there are two cash point machines at Cheltenham every year. One's Big Bucks, and the other is Quevega, and she trotted up once again in the mare's hurdle. I mean, she's just a fabulous mare, isn't she?
She is. You know, she's got everything. She's got speed and stamina, and even though they slowed down the pace in the race and she was boxed in, you've got to think that, you know, her homework is good enough to win. I'm not sure, did she win the champion hurdle in Punchestown? But I know I had her entered in the one that Hurricane Fly won up until the last minute, until he did his final bit of work and worked well, and then I switched her to the stairs hurdle. But she might have won it the year before. She won the mare's hurdle, I think. She's
won the world hurdle twice.
Yeah,
the World Series hurdle at Punchestown twice. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but she's got plenty of gears too. And so when they slowed it down, I said, as long as he can find a way through, she'll have plenty of speed.
She finished third, Willie, behind Solwit in the champion hurdle.
Right, well, that wouldn't be a bad run, would it?
No, she's got a bit of pace.
Yeah, so she's, you know, I was happy she had enough pace if Ruby could find a gap through, and eventually opened up.
And I mean, as you'll know better than me, that there were all sorts of rumours round Ireland during the Cheltenham preview nights that, you know, she'd been schooling badly and maybe wasn't quite pleasing you, etc., etc. And in the race, I couldn't see her put a single hoof wrong. I thought she jumped every hurdle immaculately.
She did. It was one of her better performances. She made a bad mistake in the Curragh with Ruby. We jumped most of our horses up there about 10 days beforehand. Jumped 12 hurdles at racing pace. And I think I said it in Leopardstown. People were asking me the same thing, rumours that she'd fall and this, that and the other, but she made a very bad mistake the second last, upsides, Hurricane Fly and a few others, and they were really flying down to it. And but that's all. She lost about 2 lengths at it and galloped on up straight then and jumped the last fine.
I guess that's what they saw. And she'll take on now, by all accounts, Vola La Vedette. That'll be a good matchup.
It'll be a good race, but don't forget there are lots of other good horses there too, you know, so it's not going to be about those two.
Now, Willie, let's just have a couple of winners that you had. Champagne Fever, king of the bumpers. They always say Mullins will win the bumper, and then you pop up with a 16-1 shot, who was a much bigger price on the day with Patrick than we all thought. How good Champagne Fever? He's
very good. He's got a huge cruising speed, and looks like, you know, he'll probably go novice hurdling next year. We might think about going novice chasing and skip hurdling. We'll have to see about that.
Interesting.
But he's got a huge cruising speed.
Why would you do that, Willie?
Just to get him chasing. I hope chasing is his game later on. Get him chasing earlier, maybe.
Well, the Champagne Fever was brilliant. The next day, of course, we saw Sir de Champ in the Jewson, who's excited everyone. Indeed, Willie, it's about time Ireland produced a decent staying chaser, and you've been absent for well, since probably Weapons Amnesty, I guess. But this horse is now favourite for the Gold Cup next year.
You're not serious.
I am deadly serious. I don't joke on this programme, Mullins.
Okay, no, I didn't know that.
He is favourite for the 2013 Gold Cup.
Right. Okay. That's no, he's a very good horse. I've always thought a lot of him, and you know, we've been keeping him under the radar this year because Gigginstown have so many good novices, and he's been going around the country, which has suited me, suited him, suited Davy Russell. So, you know, just to let him go around and win Grade 2 and Grade 3 races. But he's a horse we've always held in huge regard.
As far as the future is concerned, I mean, stamina has to be proven. Were you saying you aren't serious because you were thinking he's not going to be a 3 1/4 miler, or is that not going to be an issue for him?
Oh, I don't think any issue, no.
Right. So why are you surprised he's favourite, Willie?
Well, I imagine I would have thought long run, Burton Port maybe might be...
Well, long run's just been beaten by a Welsh national winner, and I imagine you'd think Sir de Champs would have a good chance in a handicap.
You know, long run ran a good race, and he could come back next year and be better. Sometimes horses, he had a big season last season and maybe didn't fire completely this season, so he could come back again next season.
He could do.
And be better, you know.
But you're very exciting, aren't you? I mean, you are, aren't you? That is a good horse.
Well, I think a lot of them, he always shows us. He doesn't show us plenty, actually. It's the opposite, but you know it's in the tank. Everyone that rides him just say there's lots more there. He's lazy as sin, and I like that in a horse.
Most exciting chaser in the yard?
He probably has to be, but Call the Police ran a fantastic race. However, I think just getting the ratings for the horses there this morning, I think they've put in Sir de Champs at 162, which is a huge rating. And Call the Police, I think, is only 145. He could be well handicapped if we go that route. But
you don't think Call the Police at levels would ever beat Sir de Champs, do you? Not really.
He's only had 4 runs over fences and very quiet. He's had a very quiet year. He's a good horse too.
Okay, well, you know, I had emails in saying, Willie Mullins was out of form at Cheltenham. And when you look at all your winners, Willie, what did you make of it as a whole? Were you pleased with the team? I mean, you did have a few pulled ups, but it was pretty good, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, any time you have 3 winners at Cheltenham, that's good. However, Hurricane Fly and Boston, I suppose, you know, maybe it's like in football, the bounce of a ball could have been different results. You know, it was awful to lose Scots. That, you know, he was more or less a favourite, and then Alley Guard falling in the 4 mile was another favourite. You know, they're just ones that if one of those came up, that would have been 4 winners, and that would have been a fantastic week. So, or even if just Hurricane Fly won with maybe 1 or 2, that's the sort of shape. You know, it depends when your 2 best ones probably get beaten. You know, it colours the thing a bit, but we had lots of disappointments too, which you do every year. You know, we've been going back to our results, and we brought a big team over, but you get lots of disappointments every year.
Well, still have plenty of winners. And Willie, just obviously the Grand National, the next biggest race on the horizon. You've got a whole load of entries in there. What's the team looking like as it is? You've got the anti-post favourite in Prince de Beauchesne.
Yes, I imagine he's going to run on his own. Will run. You know, I've got Kellesbury, Apt Approach, Midnight Club, Chris Gover Fontaine still in there, and we'll just see closer to the time what way they will go. But I'd be happy to get the Graham Wiley's 2 horses there. Now they would be a nice team on their own, just going.
What's the latest on Kellesbury, Willie? Because obviously we were expecting you to be in the Gold Cup field.
Yes, just Paul had ridden him the morning of the race and wasn't happy with him. He couldn't pinpoint it, and we thought it might be in his front end. I sent him to the vets in England. I left him over there, and he's coming back today, and they thought it might be something in the back end. But It's, I don't know. He just wasn't right, but he appears to be fine now. We'll see what he's like when he comes home tomorrow or the next day.
Mm. And do we have any idea? I mean, I'm sure you're going to say no to this. Do we know what Ruby's going to ride?
I haven't asked him yet, but I imagine it's always nice to ride the favourite.
Prince de Beauchamp. Would that mean Casey keeps the ride on his own?
We haven't looked at any of that yet, so
right.
We'll see.
Well, you've got to keep him on, haven't you? Got no choice, really.
Well, Paul Tan in there, and
oh yeah. But Casey's just won the big race on him. Paul can ride Quel Esprit.
We'll see. We'll see that.
Okay, but Willie, of all your Grand National hopes, they've all got different weights, etc. If you were still riding, and you were a top rider in your time, if you were still riding, which one would you like to sit on round Aintree?
I imagine Prince de Beauchamp.
Right, so you go with the favourite
nice
as well.
But then again, I wouldn't be able to do the weight, so.
No. Well, you have to stop having those pints. Well, look, Willie, absolutely tremendous stuff to chat for us so long today. Well done at Cheltenham. Lots of winners in there. Can't wait for the Hurricane. The Hurricane, have you seen him this morning? Is he bouncing again this morning?
He's bouncing. He's in good form. He came out of it quite well. We're quite pleased, So I think just an off day.
Yeah. He'll be back. He's the best hurdler in the world as far as I'm concerned, and he remains the best hurdler in the world. Willie Mullins, thank you very much for coming on our show.
Cheers, Matt.
That is the champion trainer in Ireland. Now,